Hello everybody, welcome to TCOM 101 online. I'm Dr. Mike Gerhard, Department of Telecommunications, Ball State University, and you are watching online video number 18. The coronavirus, big bully. It's kept us grounded for way too long, but we'll just have to remain patient and stay hunkered down until we get the signal to come out again. Okay, in the last video we talked about a form of government called authoritarianism. Authoritarianism is a philosophy, a form of government where you have a strong leader and limited individual freedoms, and especially political freedoms. Okay, authoritarianism. Now, thank goodness there's something inherent in human beings, I think, that desires to be free, the free spirit of humankind. And this spirit has led people to chip away at the doctrines of authoritarianism. Think about our own experience here in America with the American Revolution. This was pushing back against authority. Another good example would be the French Revolution, where the people rose up against the ruling class, the aristocracy. The French Revolution, off with their heads. The biggest threat, probably to democracy and liberty, came in the middle of the 20th century with the rise of Nazi Germany and Hitler and Mussolini in World War II. And thank goodness that the free spirit of humankind defeated the evils of Nazism. More recently, back in the 1980s, we saw the end of communism, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Here's a picture of somebody chipping away against authority. Also about that time, we had the uprising in South Africa that led to the end of apartheid, a repressive, racist policy. Okay? Again, people seeking freedom. In the 1980s, we saw Tiananmen Square. The Chinese people stood up to protest the authoritarian government there. Here's the famous picture of the tank man, the person who had the courage to stand in front of a line of tanks on Tiananmen Square. Freedom broke out in the Middle East, of course, in Iraq. We got a little help there from the United States government, but in the Middle East, during the beginning of this century, we saw the fall of a number of authoritarian regimes and dictators and strongmen. Throughout the Middle East in the 2010s, we saw something called the Arab Spring, an uprising of people trying to demand liberty, freedom, and a voice in their own government. More recently, Hong Kong has been the center of a week after week of protest, people standing up, asserting their rights to liberty and to freedom. All right. Now, I want to throw this notion at you. I call it the technologies of freedom thesis. Think about this question. Has the explosion of new media technologies made it nearly impossible for authoritarian governments to totally restrict the free flow of information? And I think the answer to this question is obvious. Yes, the new technologies have made it easier for people in authoritarian countries to circumvent authority and to seek information through the internet. Maybe the dark web is a good place for people to meet and share information in an authoritarian society. Anyway, the opposite of authoritarianism is something called libertarianism. This is the political philosophy we embrace in the United States, whether we're Republicans, Democrats, Independents. we probably all relate to this broad philosophy of libertarianism. This is a political ideology that embraces individual liberty, individual rights over the state, over the governmental authority, both in terms of the economic realm and the world of personal and social activity. Limited government, lots of individual freedoms. That's kind of the basic idea of libertarianism. Our country, the United States, is founded upon this philosophy of libertarianism. The Statue of Liberty, libertarianism. A libertarian society has to have a free and open and pluralistic, many voices, mass communication system. They go together. A free media isn't just a pillar of democracy, it is democracy. The role of the media in a democracy is fundamental, especially the watchdog function, because who else would hold government and business accountable? Now, where did all this idea of liberty and libertarianism come from? Well, it came from Europe during what's called the Age of Enlightenment. This was mostly the 1700s, 18th century Europe. Fresh currents of thought were emerging and that were kind of wearing down some of the old traditions, new ideas, new approaches, setting the stage for the great revolutions to come, the Age of Enlightenment. There are a number of thinkers and philosophers from this era who played an important role. I just want to point out the contributions of a few of my favorite philosophers, libertarian philosophers. Maybe you've heard of Immanuel Kant, the philosopher who wrote the Critique of Pure Reason. He's very well known among philosophy students, Immanuel Kant. Well, in this book, The Critique of Pure Reason, there's an intriguing little quote. Okay, check this out. Kant said, and he was talking to the general population here, he said, "Dare to know, have the courage to use your intelligence." He was telling people, you are given a brain, use it. Have the courage to use it, to think for yourself, to find the truth yourself, and not depend totally upon the elites and the rulers to define the truth. Immanuel Kant. Okay, another great philosopher from the Age of Enlightenment was John Milton, the famous poet and philosopher. Maybe you have heard of one of his works, Paradise Lost. John Milton. He was a philosopher who played a big role in promoting freedom of expression. He wrote a little pamphlet back in 1644 called the Areopagitica. Okay, and this was a little pamphlet in which he made a case against government censorship. And today we refer to his ideas as sort of the Miltonian ideal, the idea of a free and open marketplace of ideas. You know, think about the First Amendment. It protects individual rights to freedom of expression, but it's also designed to protect this bigger notion, the notion of a free and open marketplace of ideas. Here's the famous quote from Milton. Milton said, "Let truth and falsehood grapple. Let it fight it out. Whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter." In other words, put all the ideas out there. Let them compete. Eventually, truth will emerge. We call this the marketplace of ideas concept. The marketplace of ideas is a situation in which all these values, opinions, ideas, information, they're all put forward for debate and recognition. A free and open marketplace. You could also think of this as the battle of ideas concept. Put all the ideas and let them fight it out on their merits. Milton believed, and he wrote about this in the Areopagitica, that the truth would eventually emerge. He called this the self-righting principle. that truth would eventually emerge. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. It may take decades, it may take centuries for the truth to emerge. But Milton believed that, if we just put it all out there, truth, falsehood, if all of this were debated, over time, truth would always triumph over falsehood. So there'd be this self-correcting process. Again, this doesn't happen overnight. Think about the theory of evolution, which has been around since Darwin wrote about the origin of species back in the 1860s, about the time of the U.S. Civil War. Okay? That was a major attempt to redefine the truth, to move from creationism to evolution. But we know, of course, people are still debating today the truth about the origins of humankind. All right? Most people have accepted the evolutionary biological model as the explanation over creationism, but still, it's an issue that's still being debated today. All right, another important philosopher from the Age of Enlightenment was John Locke. You may have heard about John Locke in your American government class in high school, who wrote quite a bit, including the second treatise on government. Well, here's some of Locke's major concepts. Locke was really one of the founding fathers of America. First, humankind is essentially just and rational. People aren't weak. Most people are rational and capable of seeking the truth and seeking self-governance. People don't have to be treated like children. Freedom of expression is a fundamental human right, a basic human right. It should be universal. It's so important as a basic right. And Locke also argued that government exists only at the pleasure of the people. This was the justification for the American Revolution. The government needs to serve the people. And if it stops doing that, then the people have a right to change the government. Adam Smith, you may have heard of this man. He's known as the father of modern capitalism. Adam Smith wrote an important book called The Wealth of Nations. All right, and in this book, he made the argument that government should be kept small. Okay? He said government should be kept to a minimum. Allow the free marketplace, the laws of supply and demand, and the invisible hand of the marketplace. Allow those forces to guide the economic structure. And most people in America believe that, still, I think that government should be kept in its place. Okay, and not extend its hand into every single aspect of life. Thomas Jefferson, of course, one of the founding fathers who wrote the Declaration of Independence. From Jefferson emerges a couple of important concepts. Okay? First, he valued a free press. He said it was absolutely necessary for the enlightenment of citizens in a democracy to make, if people are going to govern themselves, they have to be aware of what's going on in the world. They get that information through a free press. Jefferson also said the free press was necessary because it serves as a check on the activities of public officialdom, whether it's the government or the private sector. This is the watchdog concept, that the media serve as a check on the government to hold the government accountable. Okay. Now, President Trump has disparaged the press. Okay. He's rejected the news media's role in holding the government to account. He pushes back and he uses the media as a villain, as a scapegoat, as a way to shift blame. The president wished had a better appreciation for the free press and the importance of freedom of expression in a healthy democracy. And to summarize the characteristics of libertarianism, the philosophy upon which the country, the United States, is based. The world is governed by truth. There's a truth out there that emerges from the bottom up through the marketplace of ideas, not from just what the rulers have to say. The individual is guided by reason, is rational, is mostly intelligent, is capable of seeking the truth, and capable of self-governance. Another basic concept in libertarianism is that a free marketplace of ideas is absolutely essential. In fact, that's the only way to ultimately get at the truth. Okay? In libertarianism, every individual citizen has certain basic human rights, including freedom of expression. Libertarianism embraces the notion government exists to serve the interest of the individual and not the other way around. And a final tenet of libertarianism is that the media should be a private, free, competitive enterprise. Private, not government owned. How can you do the watchdog function if the media is controlled and owned by the government? So if you put all that together, that's a summary of the basic philosophy of libertarianism. Now, all of this came together in 1791 when our founding fathers passed the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution. Okay? And the one that we really want to celebrate in this video is the First Amendment. 45 words, 5 basic freedoms. This is the document that gives us our basic rights to freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Okay? 45 words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. These are the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. And I want you to know your basic First Amendment rights. It'll be on the final exam. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, the right to peaceably assemble, and the right to petition or to ask the government for redress of grievances to help look at and examine and solve a problem. So libertarianism, this is what our country and our media system is based upon, the philosophy of libertarianism. So that's all we've got in this lecture. I hope you got some benefit from this discussion. Okay? We'll continue this uphill fight against the coronavirus with hopes that the end will be in sight soon. That's all I've got for this video. Take care. We'll see you later.